Hey everybody, thanks for coming first. My name's Duncan, I'm a VP of Product at Memberclicks. So today we're going to be talking about culture and how we really transformed our product and engineering culture at Memberclicks over the past 12 months and how the tools that we instrumented have really fed that culture and created a cycle of culture of feedback to progress, to more feedback, to more progress, and got on that flywheel. And we've done that through the philosophy of just getting close to our customers. So that's been our theme, and we'll talk about a little bit about my background and why we chose that theme and how we built that culture. So first, thank you all for coming. Quick show of hands. How many people have heard my name before? A handful. The Pendo crew, that's great. And the guys I work with at Memberclicks, that's good. So how many people have heard about Memberclicks before? Great. So one in the back, great. So I think what's important from that is I don't have a big brand name. Memberclicks outside of our space doesn't have a big brand name. But we all know the importance of customer centricity. How many people are product managers in the room? That's the majority. What about user experience? UX, UI, okay. What else? What am I missing? Customer success. Perfect. Okay, so customer centricity, customer success, those obviously go hand in hand. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk about Memberclicks. Just so you have the context, we're going to go through a couple of use cases specifically about product development at Memberclicks. I want to talk about my background a little bit, as I mentioned, so you understand my perspective. The majority of the people are in products or UX or customer success. I think one of the things that we do as product people, we have to validate our ideas. And what that means is understanding our own biases and being able to take the data and juxtapose the data against our biases to make sure that the decisions we're making are good and accurate. So I want you to understand my background so you have my bias. So our number one goal, as I mentioned, we're going to create a culture around customer feedback. We'll talk about the tools that we use to really reinforce that culture and to make it resonate with engineering. How we measure success, especially with Pendo, but a few other tools. And then a couple of markers of success for us. We look at them in two frames, short-term, long-term, and just to give you guys some idea of what we look at to mark our success over those time periods. So first things first, about Memberclicks. So Memberclicks is what's called an association management software. I started at Memberclicks in 2008, and I knew nothing about software. I was a teacher beforehand, and I knew nothing about associations. But I applied through Monster.com, and they liked the name Duncan McCreery. They thought it sounded very Scottish, and that would be kind of fun to have around. So I was the 16th employee or 15th employee, something like that. Yeah, it's remarkable, right? And they liked my attitude, so I got hired. So Memberclicks is like very, very funky. We're a very quirky group. We're like that internally. We're like that externally. The two fellas here, one of them, Richie Ward on the left there, and Brandon Gilbreth. Brandon Gilbreth we call Beef, like it's that kind of culture. Everyone just has a little nickname, and we have a lot of fun. It's a very family feel, I suppose. So this was last Halloween. The sales team went as the '95 Chicago Bulls. As you can see, there's a coach in the back, the referee. One of our BDRs dressed up as the billboard because he didn't have, there were only 5 people on the court. But it's that kind of place. So we have a little over 50 people on staff. We've got 1,640 some odd customers. We're all in Atlanta, so we all come to the office every day. No one works remotely. It's a very, very tightly knit group. And then we're focused on people and we're focused on culture. We're focused on culture internally. We're focused on culture externally as well. We really, we beat that drum and we wave that flag. Culture, 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 culture. If you go to LinkedIn or if you go to Glassdoor, you're going to see our culture deck. We kind of were inspired by Netflix to create a culture deck and let people know what we are all about at Memberclicks. Our product, this association management software, is it's a big product in terms of feature set. So we do everything from front-end website to back-end database, event registrations, broadcast email, what's called membership management, so automating a dues renewal process. It does a lot of different things, and our customer base are small associations, so maybe they're volunteer run, maybe they're 5 staff, maybe they're 10 staff. More than 15 staff, probably not. So what we know about our customer base is time is really, really valuable to them. How many people have worked in a small startup? What's the most precious resource, right? Time, right? You've got to be able to save time. So that's our customer base, but in the nonprofit association world, where they're very, very time constrained, and they're not really that interested in technology. It's kind of like a necessary evil. If they have any chance of being able to get through the day, they're going to need to leverage technology to create efficiencies, and that's really our value proposition. We're going to automate and we're going to integrate so they don't have to spend time taking a member list and putting it into Constant Contact, and then taking registrations from Eventbrite and importing those into Constant Contact. We're going to create an ecosystem where all of those pieces are automated. So that's our value prop. So about me, as I mentioned, I started Memberclicks in 2008, and I knew nothing. I was super, super green. And I really, I'm in my early 30s. I don't have 20 years of experience. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today are really, it's anecdotal. This is what has worked for us. Some things that haven't worked for us. But it's really been a large experiment over the past 3 years that I've been in this product role, which is great because product people are supposed to experiment. Background-wise, customer success, director of customer experience, VP of customer experience, customer, 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 customer. Now you understand my bias. Not a technology person. My bachelor's was in Russian studies. Not a technology person. I went to Wheaton College in Massachusetts, which is like the liberal arts of liberal arts school. And it's just funny because now I work with a bunch of Georgia Tech grads who kind of look down on me. There's one guy, actually our VP of engineering was a sociology major from the University of Chicago. So the University of Chicago is his ivory tower. He gets to sit in that. But he's done 20 years of technology, so that's his street cred. I'm still working for mine. Which is probably germane to this, because one of the challenges that I had when I stepped into this role was, how am I going to relate to these Georgia Tech grads who are incredibly talented, incredibly smart, masters in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech, like uber smart, on a different level from myself. And so I realized that they weren't going to just listen to me up on my soapbox talking about the importance of customers. And that was going to be a challenge, because if we were going to build a customer-centric culture, we needed to have the same language, we needed to have the same priorities. Ultimately, when I stepped into the role, the team was highly productive. Richie was actually our VP of engineering at the time, and he had that team cranking. Like, they were flowing, they had great chemistry within the team, but we didn't have a lot of focus on output. And we weren't really seeing things come full circle. So we would ship a feature, t-shirts like they said this morning, donuts, everyone's happy, next feature. It's kind of that assembly line. And that's okay. That's okay, but it wasn't optimized. If you looked at engineering, that one's working pretty well. We're producing. We've got throughput. If you looked at sales, again, that one's producing. That one's got throughput. If you looked at our DevOps team, we were a little shaky at the time. That was an area that we were really just starting to invest in, so that took some time. But what we saw was we had these very, very intense conversations about priorities. And we didn't have any common ground to get on the same page, nothing to unite us, nothing to say, okay, if this is the goal, what really is most important? Whatever group you were representing, that was the most important thing to you. And I can tell you, and Rishi will attest to this, I was like, the thing that I brought to the table wasn't education or experience, but just stubbornness. So I was like always the loudest voice in the room. I always had the most customer anecdotes, but it was total just stubborn passion. This is what I think is right. Again, that was not going to work in the product role. So how do we bring this customer feedback to life? How do we visualize it? How do we get it to permeate the organization so that we can unify around it? We did a pretty good job of this from the start. And Brandon and I went out to, Beef, you probably remember him as, we went out to Salt Lake City last fall and went to the Front conference. And there were a couple of presentations about people with these same struggles and some of the discovery processes and some of the tools that were helping. One of the tools that was presented there was Full Story, down on the bottom there. And we're a big fan. They're another Atlanta company. But what they did was it opened our eyes to the power of empathy. And from that empathy, creating trust. So what we did, we started having, we do retrospectives as the engineering team every other week. But we started once a month after one of those retros having a full story session. And the whole team, DevOps, product, engineering, we would just watch random clips of full story. And we just watch one after another. And sometimes it was like high five, yes, nailed it from one of those features that we had shipped and never looked at again. And other times it was like sad face, grimace, depressing, oh, how could that ever happen? We didn't know that this was actually happening. And that's one of the ones that we'll dive into that we're able to take action on because it was such a clear priority. So thinking about the tools that we use to create this customer feedback culture. ProdPad we use for a lot of qualitative data. That initially for us was just an internal tool. So that's what we were taking, sales input, implementation input, customer success input, just so we would have it all in the same place. Prior to that, it was a lot of hallway conversations. So it was, hey, Duncan, hey, Duncan. I was a team of one. And I just couldn't keep track of it. And I'm the kind of person who I like a lot of information, but if I don't feel organized, I feel stressed, which made me very unpleasant to deal with in those hallway conversations. So we knew we needed a tool there. And then we started doing a lot more surveys. We use Google Forms. We use Pendo for surveys. We love those. NPS we have done traditionally through Zendesk. And then we just started our first NPS through Pendo within the last 4 or 6 weeks. And then we got more routine about sitting down with the internal staff. So we got all of this qualitative data, and we really used ProdPad to house all of that. So from all of our interviews, our surveys, everything got typed up and put into ProdPad. And we had to do a really good job, because that gets overwhelming. We had to do a really good job of tagging. So we just wanted to see themes. What feature of the product was getting the most feedback? What were people most interested in? Either praise or negative, we wanted it all. Qualitative data, Pendo has been huge for us. As the product person, I can look at paths, I can look at funnels, we can get that in front of the team. We can validate whether some of our hypotheses are true. If we see something interesting in full story, we'll go to Pendo and just see how frequently it happens, how popular that feature is. Hugely, hugely powerful because we get very, very quick answers. New Relic, is everyone familiar with New Relic? Yeah, I see heads nodding. That one's been great just for performance, for lingering things. Huge for the DevOps team. I don't get a whole lot out of it, but I see the value that they get. The one that opened my eyes was Sentry. Sentry's probably a little less known. Is anyone familiar with Sentry? So this was one where the engineers and the DevOps team were telling me, they're saying, we have all these errors, we have all these errors, we have all these errors, and we're not really sure what the customer impact is, but we know when we look at the logs, we use log entries, we have a lot of errors. And I said, well, that's great, guys, but we can spend a lot of time combing through error logs, but we don't know, we've got no way to quantify it, we have no way to say this is impactful or important. It's just going to be kind of throwing darts in the dark. And that's not good. I can't justify spending our time on that. But what Sentry does, it's a really cool tool. It randomly samples all of the errors. So you install it in the app, and it randomly samples all of the errors, and then it will give you the frequency and the priority. It's got an algorithm to calculate the priority of these errors. So now, when we were going in, we were saying, okay, let's do some tech debt, let's fix some of these back-end errors, we're able to see the impact of that. And all of a sudden, now that we're seeing these things bubble up, we're able to correlate those with bugs that users were reporting. And so rather than just reacting to bugs being reported, we're able to get ahead of it by using the tool. So that quantitative data really, really helped me understand the impact of what the teams were telling me. So here's an example process. So sometimes, traditional market research, you start with interviews and you start with qualitative data, and then you take that quantitative data to back it up and to make sure that it's real and impactful and all those things. So we do that most of the time. And when we do that, we start with ProdPad, we get those themes, the product team vets it, we categorize it, we go through all of those pieces. Then as I mentioned, we go to Pendo just to see how pervasive it is. And then we'll go to full story just to identify our opportunities. So we'll go to full story and we'll say, okay, if XYZ feature is being used, let's watch people use it. Let's get that session playback and see where our opportunities are, kind of get the creative juices flowing. Really, really valuable there. Less often, but actually the example that we're going to dig into a little bit more today, is looking at the quantitative data first. So what we'll do, and this is like a super basic example, but we'll go to Pendo, and we'll go to the features or the pages, and we'll just sort by number of accounts using it, or number of visitors using it, or time on site if it's a page. Then we'll go to ProdPad, and we'll look at our feedback, and we'll say, okay, well, if everyone's using this, what kind of feedback are we getting? Positive, negative, otherwise? And now then let's look at full story to see what's going wrong or what's going right. And we'll decide if we want to do something about it, or if we think it's good enough as is, or if we're doing a great job, we'll pat each other on the back, and maybe we'll talk to marketing about getting some more content out there about that feature. So we're kind of creating this ecosystem that touches sales, marketing, DevOps, engineering, all through this customer feedback cycle. So this example, this is like my favorite release ever. It was the one that really put us over the hump in terms of understanding the value of customer feedback and building processes around customer feedback throughout the organization. So this is our Pendo, and it was shortly after we launched. We didn't have a whole lot of data in there yet, but you see that top row, profile list quick search. We just ordered by the number of clicks, and it's, what, 30,000 some. The next one is the admin profile, which is, what, 28,000, and then it drops off to like 17,000 on down the list. So what was eye-opening about this for us, we had this kind of legacy feature quick search where if I am an association, I can just type in someone's name, first name, last name, name of their organization, and it'll give me a whole long list of profiles. And we thought, well, that's a pretty basic feature. What could go wrong? We saw it being used so much, we said, wow, we haven't looked at this since like, Memberclicks was founded in 1998. This feature was probably launched in the mid-2000s. Maybe it got revamped in the late 2000s. But it had been like 7 or 8 years before we put any amount of energy into this feature, even thought into it. So this was an eye-opener that it was being used this much. So here's what it looks like. You type in you can see at the top, there's a little 1 there. At the very top on the left there. You type in the name or the partial name, then you get the list of the profiles, then you can drill in. Very, very simple. What could go wrong? What we saw when we went to full story was typos, misspellings. If you're in product and you're looking for a customer, how many customers' last names do you really know how to spell like perfectly? So even if you got the first 3 or 4 letters, you might have 100 results if you've got 50,000 members in your database. So we were creating a lot of work. Or there would be a typo in the name, and you would get no results, so they'd have to go and search again. So the reason that quick search usage was so inflated was it wasn't a very good feature. It wasn't helpful. We were creating work for our users to find the person that they were looking for. So Pendo told us this was being done a lot. Full story told us, here's your problem. Once you understand the problem, it's usually pretty easy to do something about it. So the team did a full story session just around quick search. We spent an hour just watching quick search sessions in full story. We decided to do suggestive searching because that was just kind of the obvious thing to do. If you don't know how to spell something, let's get 3 characters and give them a list of who we think we're looking for. And this is where it got good because that's not anything like hugely innovative. But our cycle and our iteration cycle was entirely customer feedback driven. So this was our V1 alpha. We released it to 10 customers. And it was start typing, we'll suggest, you click one of the names, you go right to the profile. Immediately this made things better. Because at least if I had a typo and I had no results, we would immediately tell you there were no results. So in Pendo, we saw the feature usage of quick search starting to go down for those 10 customers. That was a good thing. Using Pendo for surveys and guides, for our alpha group, once they used that search 10 times, they got a survey. And it just said, hey, how do you like this? Is it good? Is it lousy? Tell us. And in the second part of this, there was a qualitative, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Just give us a little bit more qualitative data. And what we found is that people really wanted to search by email address. Whoops, totally forgot to add searching by email address in there, even though it's really obvious in retrospect. We got some good things in terms of what they wanted to see in those mini results. So what organization were they part of? Were they a key contact within that organization, or were they just someone who kind of participated through the membership of the organization, that sort of thing. So we were able to fine-tune it, and what we did was took it to 10 customers, they got their surveys, we identified the things that we wanted to change, took it to 10 more customers, they got the surveys, we identified the things we wanted to change, and we did that for 3 or 4 cycles until we all kind of looked at each other and said, 50 customers have this, everyone's really liking it, we're done, we're good. And there was no definition of done going into the project. It was consensus at the end of the project when we'd known we had really delivered value to our customers. So now we said, okay, let's measure that value. So here was our quick search usage, and you see these numbers a little bit bigger because before we were looking at just the July sample. We had launched Pendo in June, so now we had a lot more data. But even the usage, knowing that the number of accounts was going up, we started with over 8,000 uses of quick search, and that then through the rollout of instant search, you can see there's pretty immediate gratification there. We almost cut that number in half. So that was cool, and we kind of expected that, knowing that we were taking care of typos and we were taking care of misspellings. Pendo gave us something else that was more insightful, though, and it was one of those cases where one thing leads to another in terms of priorities. With the number of quick searches going down, and a lot of our customers are data entry specialists, so they are in profiles all day, in and out, in and out, in and out, what we saw was they were getting a lot more work done. So wow, man, you want to deliver value? Help someone get more work done in their day, right? So this is our admin profile views. So the number of profiles that are actually being viewed by our administrators every day. So we made it a lot faster for them to find the profiles, and all of a sudden they are doing a lot more per day. So if your job is to correct member data, update addresses, take those customer service calls, you're happier because you're not fighting with it anymore, it's working for you. So we felt really, really good about this. We felt so good about it, and this was like the light bulb moment for me. One of our mid-level engineers came up to me and he said, "Hey Duncan, we gotta do more surveys. We gotta do more surveys." I was like, I've never had an engineer say, "Hey, we want more customer feedback, we gotta get more surveys, I'm kind of getting into this." But they were just so hungry for that next project, whatever it's gonna be. Redoing the admin profile is obviously important now that we know we're driving feature usage to that. But it was a seminal moment in our evolution culturally because everyone saw the impact we were making to the customers. If you think about why you come to work every day, you want to have an impact. Like, we build stuff fundamentally as product people, as UI, UX people, customer success. We're all part of this ecosystem that builds things. And you want people to use your product, and you want people to love your product, and being able to illustrate the value that you're delivering, hugely, hugely impactful to bring people together and to get people focused on a mission. So how do we measure success? We look at the short term. We looked at the surveys via Pendo, and we looked at the feature adoption. That's like instant gratification. We're not expecting to move mountains or change someone's overall perspective of our product or our company with one feature release. We expect that to happen over time. So over the long term, we also looked at feature adoption. We don't want people just to use a product because we were marketing it. We want people to use it and have it be part of their routine day in, day out. Improved NPS, as I mentioned, we started doing NPS through Pendo. We want to see that trend up over time. I'm a big advocate of alignment through your compensation. So I went to my first year in product, I had a meeting with our CEO, and he goes, "Well, how do you want this package to be structured?" And I said, "I want sales and churn. I want it simple. I want sales and churn. I don't want to do NPS. I don't want to do features delivered. I don't want to do ratings on features. I want to do sales and churn, because then there will be never any question about where my priorities are." And so I'm a big advocate for doing that for the product and engineering teams in general, because it gets everyone on the same page with what's important. And when there's a tough decision to be made, everyone has that same kind of stake in the game. So I'm a big, big proponent of that. So how did we do? And this isn't like a brag session. I don't really like this slide because I think it's still early in our learning. But 2015 to 2016, we tripled our NPS score. Went from like 10 to 30. It wasn't like hugely successful before that. But that's a nice trend. We like that. Our sales team increased front-end sales 49%, almost 50% year over year. We were very, very happy about that. It's not just one impact. It's not like, hey, this new process brought all these success things. We had a lot of things working for us. but we had alignment throughout the organization, right? So the sales team having success, the engineers, again, this is the first time I'd had this experience in Memberclicks, but the engineers were like, how are we doing on sales this month? Like, how are we doing? Like, are we at quota? Are we at ultra stretch? Like, where are we doing? And they wanted to know the last week of the month, that's what the team wanted to know about, because they knew that they were bought in to that same goal. So it wasn't like sales is asking for this feature. It was like, what can we do to better help sales? Again, alignment throughout the organization through customer feedback. It's an ecosystem. It all fell in line for us. And then lastly, we look at, from a customer success perspective, if you used our product the first year and you're pretty happy with our product the first year, you're going to be a customer for 7, 8 years. We know that. We've been doing this a long time. So if we're able to get our first year retention up to 97%, it went from like 92 to 97, which was a significant bump for us. It had only gone up like a percentage point or 2 the previous 4 years. That's going to be impactful for our business. So as I mentioned, we're early in our journey doing this. I've been in this role for 3 years. We have a new VP of engineering. Richie moved on to the VP of customer experience. Hugely helpful for alignment if you can get your VP of engineering to move into your VP of customer experience. But what we've done in the meantime, we have opened the doors of customer dialogue to engineers, and we've really encouraged them. So we use Calendly to schedule discovery calls. Every time a customer schedules a discovery call with us, the whole engineering team gets pinged in Slack. And if they're interested in the topic, if they're available, they sit in on the call. So we're getting the engineers, the UX, UI, everybody right up front as part of that discovery process. As part of that, we're revamping our prototyping process. It used to be that product would take all the discovery and do all the requirements, and then we would sit down with UI, UX, and we would do prototypes, and that was kind of like, it was like marching orders. It wasn't a very creative, collaborative process. It was brain dump, go, execute. Now we're doing A/B testing. We're getting customers on the call to review early prototypes and getting their feedback and tweaking. Again, bringing that customer feedback to us earlier in the process. It's less expensive for us because we can make changes a lot faster in Framer without the engineers committing a lot of time. But it's also brought them as part of that discovery process, part of that prototyping conversation. So if an engineer is looking at something, they're saying, yeah, we could do that, but it'd be a lot easier if we did it this way. Having those discoveries earlier by bringing that collaborative environment to the group has paid huge dividends in terms of our efficiencies. So for us, I don't think that I don't think customer centricity is a silver bullet. I know it has a lot of buzz in the world today. I'm a proponent of it, but that's my bias. But I think it is important that an organization, a product development organization, a business has a North Star, they have a compass, they have something that everyone can rally around. So for us, it was customer centricity, and we're still early on that journey. But I would really think about what gets you out of bed in the morning, what gets you to work, what do you really enjoy, right? When you think about your successes over the past year, 2 years, whatever, what are those things? And now let's find some patterns within the organization and see if we can unite people around that. For us, it's kind of part of our DNA to be really close with our customers, so this worked. But I think it's going to be unique to each organization. So for us, grew empathy. That empathy resulted in more trust and more collaboration, ultimately increasing the impact that the product development organization had, allowing that to spill over to the rest of the organization. Thanks, guys. Any questions? All set. All right. Thanks, guys.